I've lived in this house for 6 years. I know every room, every closet, every corner of it. So when the walls started feeling wrong, when I noticed the hallway was 3 feet shorter than it should be, I started measuring, and the numbers didn't add up. According to the floor plan, my house is 1,400 square feet, but when I measured every room myself, wall by wall, I only accounted for 1,200 square feet. There are 200 square feet of my house that don't exist on the inside, and last night, I found out where they went. My name is Nathan. I'm a 38-year-old architect. I say that not to impress you, but because it matters to this story. I measure things for a living. I understand space, proportion, dimension. I notice when something is wrong with a building the way a musician notices a wrong note, automatically, before I've even consciously processed it. Which is why it's so strange that it took me 6 years to notice. It started with a feeling. Not a dramatic feeling, not dread or fear or anything cinematic, just a quiet sense of wrongness that I couldn't place, like a word you can't remember or a face you almost recognize. Something was slightly off about my house, and my brain kept nudging me toward it without being able to say exactly what. I bought this house 6 years ago. It's a 2-story colonial built in 1987. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, a living room, a dining room, and a basement. According to the original floor plan I received at closing, a document I had looked at once and filed away and never thought about again, the total square footage is 1,400. In March, I was doing some home improvement planning, and I pulled out those old documents. I spread the floor plan on my kitchen table and looked at it properly for the first time in years. And that's when the feeling that had been bothering me for months suddenly had a shape. Something about the proportions looked wrong. I am an architect. I have looked at thousands of floor plans. The proportions in this one, specifically the relationship between the hallway length and the rooms it connected, looked off in a way I couldn't immediately articulate. It was subtle. It was the kind of thing only someone who works with spatial dimensions every day would catch. I got out a tape measure. I spent the next 2 hours measuring every room in my house, every wall, every doorway, every corridor. I wrote each measurement down, and then I did the math. 1,199 square feet. I checked my arithmetic 3 times. I measured 3 rooms twice. The number didn't change. My house should be 1,400 square feet. I could only account for 1,199. There were 200 square feet of my house that didn't show up when I measured the inside. I told myself the floor plan was simply inaccurate. Old houses have discrepancies between their listed square footage and their actual measurements. It's not uncommon. The numbers rarely match exactly. But 201 square feet is not a rounding error. 201 square feet is a room. I started mapping it. If there was a space inside the walls of my house that I hadn't accounted for, it had to be somewhere. I drew a rough sketch of my floor plan as I had measured it and overlaid it on the original document. The discrepancy was concentrated in one area, the northeast corner of the house, between my master bedroom and the exterior wall. On my measured plan, the bedroom wall ended and the exterior wall began. On the original plan, there was clearly more space between them. I went to my master bedroom and stood at the wall. It looked completely normal. Painted drywall, a framed print of a landscape I'd hung there years ago, a small bookshelf pushed against it. Normal. I knocked on it. The sound that came back was not the flat, solid knock of a wall backed by insulation and exterior cladding. It was hollow. I pulled the bookshelf away from the wall. Nothing behind it except clean painted drywall. I knocked again at different points across the wall. The hollow sound was consistent, roughly a 6-foot section, floor to ceiling, returning that deep, resonant knock of empty space. There was a cavity behind my bedroom wall. I am an architect. I know that cavities exist. They're where pipes run, where wiring goes. But a 6-foot wide cavity from floor to ceiling is not a pipe chase. That is a room. I got a stud finder and traced the edges of the space, and then I did something I am still not entirely sure was the right decision. I got a drill. I drilled a small hole, 2 inches in diameter, in the center of that wall and shone my phone's flashlight through it. The light disappeared into darkness. I pressed my eye to the hole. There was a room on the other side. I could only see a narrow slice of it through the 2-inch opening, but it was enough. Wooden floorboards, old, much older than my house should be, a ceiling lower than my bedroom ceiling, and on the far wall, barely visible at the edge of my flashlight's reach, what appeared to be a chair, an old wooden chair facing the wall. I put my mouth over my hand and stepped back. There was a room inside my house that I had never known about, a room with old floors and old furniture that predated my house by the look of it, a room that did not appear on any floor plan, a room that no previous owner had mentioned, no home inspector had flagged, no document had referenced, a room that someone had very deliberately sealed up and hidden. Long pause, 4 full seconds. I found the door 2 days later. I hadn't wanted to cut open the wall before understanding the structure first, professional habit. So I spent those 2 days going over the house inch by inch, looking for any other sign of an access point. It was in the back of my bedroom closet, the closet I had used every day for 6 years. The back wall of my closet, behind the hanging clothes, had a vertical seam in the drywall that I had always assumed was a repair or a panel join. When I finally pushed on it, it swung inward on concealed hinges. A door, painted over, seamlessly integrated into the wall, completely invisible unless you knew to push it. I stood in my closet with a flashlight in one hand and my phone, dialed to my brother's number, 1 tap from calling, and the other, and I stepped through. Music cue, silence, complete and total for 3 seconds. The room was small, maybe 15 by 13 feet. The floor was old hardwood, dry and dusty. The ceiling was low, maybe 7 feet versus my bedroom's 9. The walls were bare plaster, old, with a faded pattern beneath where wallpaper had been stripped away long ago. The wooden chair was there, old oak, straight-backed, facing the wall as I had seen through the hole. And on the wall it faced, scratched directly into the plaster in letters about 2 inches high, covering most of the wall from eye height down to the floor, were words. Not random words, not madness, sentences, paragraphs, written in a small, cramped, extremely neat hand and covering every inch of available wall space in tightly packed lines. A diary. Someone had been kept in this room, and they had written their entire story on the walls. I photographed every inch of it. I haven't shared the photographs publicly, and I won't, not because I don't want to, but because the police have asked me not to while they investigate. What I can tell you is that the diary spans what appears to be several months. The entries begin with confusion and fear. They end, the last entry, in the bottom right corner of the final wall, the letters smaller as if the writer was trying to fit in one more thing. A name I recognized, the surname of the family who owned this house before me. Pause. Let that sit. The police have been involved for 3 weeks now. I'm not living in the house. I don't know if I'll go back. The room has been examined. The forensics team found evidence of long-term habitation. They found things I won't describe here. They are investigating it as a historical crime, something that happened in that room potentially decades ago. They are trying to identify the author of the diary by the name in the final entry and trace what happened to them. I check in with the detective on the case every few days. She updates me when she can. The investigation is ongoing. But I keep thinking about one thing that has nothing to do with the investigation and everything to do with why I haven't slept properly in 3 weeks. I lived in that house for 6 years. I walked past that closet wall every morning, and every night, while I slept 12 inches away on the other side of that drywall, the chair sat in the dark in that sealed room, facing the wall, waiting for someone to come back. Before you go to sleep tonight, knock on your walls, just to make sure nothing knocks back. Just to make sure nothing knocks back. Subscribe for a new AI horror story every single day. Tell me in the comments, would you have gone through that door?